Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning on a press conference relating to TTIP. I'm Lars Näslund. I'm on my day job as the country manager for 3M, and I'm also the chairman of AmCham Sweden. So it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all here. And I would also express a special thanks to Prime PR for hosting us and being part of the event, and for Diggin making the videos. So the topic for today is to learn actually what's behind another acronym. The US English is full of acronyms, and TTIP is another one, and it's pronounced in many ways, but I'm sure if you don't know what TTIP is, I'm sure you will know exactly what it means at the end of the day. The purpose of this is to promote, grow, and simplify US-EU trade. So thank you all again for coming, and I'll turn it over to my colleague at AmCham, Randy Gosda.
Thank you, Lars. And thank everyone for coming this morning. The EU and the US today have 2.8 trillion euros invested in each other's economies, and it's the largest trading zone in the world. But there's a lot of opportunities yet that remain on both sides of the Atlantic. So last year, President Barack Obama endorsed the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership. And this successful negotiation, if it comes to fruition, could have tremendous implications for Sweden. Today, Sweden is the 13th largest trading partner with the United States. 7% of all products and services in Sweden are exported to the United States. But if you ask the average person on the street what TTIP means, they probably couldn't tell you that if the negotiations are successful, it could mean double-digit growth in the economy. It could put 1,700 kroner in the pockets of the average family here. And if the non-tariff trade barriers are removed, it could slice in half the costs that are related to those for businesses. So it's a very, very wide-reaching and important process going on. So to raise awareness for that, AmCham Sweden has produced a series of videos, and we're going to introduce the first two of those today. And they feature interviews with people from the governments on both sides of the Atlantic, as well as business experts and leaders here. So I'd like to especially thank our guest here this morning, Eva Björling, the Minister for Trade for the Swedish government, U.S. Ambassador Mark Brzezinski, and Hans Strohberg, who is the Europe co-chair for the Transatlantic Business Dialogue. There are also some other people here today that I'd like to recognize that helped us with these videos. Lena Johansson, who is the General Director for Kommerskollegium. Maro Gozo, who is the Chief Economist for Business Sweden. Torbjörn Sundvall, who is the CEO of Galatea, the largest importer of beer between the U.S. and Sweden. Ton Kui, who is the general manager of Anna's Pepperkakor. Katarina Rudolfsson, who is here as a representative she's a Swedish Landmästare. Joachim Berne, who is a sales manager for Sail Racing, a clothing company in Sweden. Emmy Blix, the founder of Swedish Has-Beens, a shoe company here, is not able to attend, but Fia Hack from her company is here with us this morning. And Magnus Nielsen, a CEO for Ex Vivo Perfusion, a company that deals with medical devices for transplants. He's actually in the United States going through some negotiations with the FDA today, and he's hopefully watching us on live stream. I'd also like to give a very, very big thanks to Diggin, who has produced these videos and is live streaming this. Alexander Witkowski, Mats Larsson, Teresa Reberry have been very, very instrumental. And Gustav Reinfeldt from Prime PR has helped us put this event together. So with that, I would like to turn this over for our first speaker, the ambassador, U.S. Ambassador to Sweden, Mark Brzezinski.
Thank you, Randy. Let me actually, before I take the mic, put this cup over here. I love the fact that we have representatives of the beer and pepperkakor industries here. That's about as real as it gets. And that's what the goal of this exercise. So, yes, thank you. All right, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. and I'd like to salute AmCham Sweden for its leadership in raising awareness of the benefits of TTIP through the program we're unveiling today. And I'd like to salute the Ministry of Trade for its support, and I'm honored that Minister Björling and AmCham Sweden Chairman Lars Naslund could join us. And I love always working with my friend Hans Stroberg on the different TTIP initiatives that we have been doing and that we will do in the course of 2014. This is a really special occasion, and I'm excited that U.S. Embassy Stockholm is part of this innovative project to publicize the work for a comprehensive trade agreement between the U.S. and the EU. I can't think of a better venue for this than Prime, which has long been a leader in public relations in Sweden, in Europe, and beyond. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP, is a unique agreement, and it's poised to transform the international trade landscape. The urgency, the significance of this initiative for us Americans, and hopefully beyond, was reflected in President Obama's State of the Union address just earlier this week. And President Obama made it clear, a new trade partnership with Europe will create more jobs. TTIP is a hugely important US-EU effort to remove barriers to trade and to pave the way for job creation and increased economic growth on both sides of the Atlantic. The US-EU relationship in trade and investment, as you heard from Randy, is the largest and most complex in the world, generating goods and services trade flows of approximately $2.7 billion a day. U.S. foreign direct investment in the EU totals over $2.1 trillion. EU investment in the U.S. totals $1.6 trillion. Together, these figures are responsible for roughly 6.8 million jobs. Over 50% of all U.S. direct investment goes to EU member states. By comparison, in 2010, U.S. investment in the BRIC countries was a mere 4%. But we need to do more to help especially small business owners, entrepreneurs who create most new jobs in America. And when 98% of our exporters are small businesses, a new trade partnership with Europe will help them create more jobs. One of the most exciting points about TTIP is that the companies who stand to benefit the most are exactly those companies, the small and medium-sized businesses. SMEs often have the hardest time navigating tariff and non-tariff barriers on both sides of the Atlantic. If we can pass TTIP, SMEs are poised to reap huge benefits with the creation of the world's largest single market. I also want to say that we view the potential impact of TTIP as going well beyond trade and investment. It really is a strategic bet on our shared future. Some have called TTIP an economic NATO. And of course, NATO is much greater than the sum of its parts. Like NATO, TTIP is directly related to the major question of our times. What is the central mission of the West in the world today? TTIP is a shared American-European vision of the future which will deepen, broaden, and diversify our ties. It is a strategic vision of a revitalized West, the beginning of a transatlantic renaissance from which the whole world can benefit, not just those in the transatlantic community, but those beyond its borders as well. It is about Atlantic unity, it is about European unity, and strategically with TTIP, if we can get it done, it really is the best is yet to come when it comes to the transatlantic relationship. Now, I don't want my enthusiasm to get the better of me because I know that I'm preaching to the converted here in Sweden, which is why this video series we are about to inaugurate is so important. Crucial to the success of this agreement will be educating the public on the benefits of TTIP. And that is why it is essential for the business community to get behind TTIP and the benefits it can bring. The Sprint Ericsson deal is just one win-win example of how increased trade and investment can benefit stakeholders across the Atlantic, including those represented here today. The concept of these videos that we will unveil is so elegantly simple and effective by having real people speak about what an expanding market will mean for them, and by an explanation of what TTIP means to business in real terms, whether they are small medium, or large, in plain language. For example, if you are a consumer, you will benefit by lower prices for goods and services. Small business owners will benefit from less red tape, making it easier for them to export their goods and services. Inventors will benefit from having streamlined standards and testing, which avoid duplication while still maintaining health and safety protocols that both Americans and Europeans support. These videos speak directly to the issue President Obama raised in the State of the Union address earlier this week when he said, quote, "We need to work together on tools like bipartisan trade promotion authority to protect our workers, protect our environment, and open new markets to new goods stamped made in the USA." These two videos are the first of several, which will be rolled out over the next coming weeks. We believe that this educational outreach can be a model for other countries as well, in order to reach as many people as possible. After all, this deal is about people, and it is incumbent on all of us to share the information, the context of this deal, as far and wide as possible. And Sweden is a natural partner in this project. Sweden is highly regarded as a wise voice on behalf of the West. And when Sweden and Swedish companies speak, people listen. Now that may go against the law of Jantelagen, but I urge the Swedes to project this information. They have great credibility, you have great credibility, and there's a great story to tell here. And that's not just me saying that. The European Council on Foreign Relations issued a report just yesterday saying that Sweden ranks third with Germany in terms of influence in foreign policy in Europe. The next stage is to ensure that these videos gain as broad an audience as possible. Please distribute them far and wide via social media and your platforms. I encourage all of you to speak up. I will tell you that when I leave this press conference today, I will head to my computer and I will email the YouTube to a number of different multipliers to get the word out. Please do the same thing. Promoting the benefits of TTIP through social media and other means will help us achieve our goal. When President Obama visited in September, one of his first comments to me was, "The Swedes are great, aren't they?" And of course, I agreed wholeheartedly. Thank you all for coming today.
So to start off here with the first video entitled, "What is TTIP?"
Det skulle vara bra om man fick konkurrera på samma villkor som amerikanerna. Jag tror ju på den amerikanska marknaden, jag gillar den.
Handelsavtalet som nu håller på att förhandlas mellan EU och USA kallas för TTIP, vilket står för Transatlantiska partnerskapet för handel och investeringar. Syftet med TTIP är att avlägsna handelsbarriärer i en mängd olika ekonomiska sektorer för att göra det enklare att köpa och sälja varor och tjänster över Atlanten. TTIP ska även göra det lättare för företagen att investera i varandras ekonomier.
Handeln i världen är inte fri och det här handelsavtalet som nu förhandlas mellan USA och EU, det är det största, i särklass allra största som pågår. Det är inte ens så att man kallar det för ett handelsavtal, utan det är ju ett partnerskap. Och det är för att ta bort de handelshinder som faktiskt finns.
Alltså den amerikanska marknaden är ju väldigt viktig för oss, men det är svårare att konkurrera i USA för oss med vår egen webbshop till exempel och så. För att det är ju 8% tull på allt vi skickar liksom. Tullen gör ju att det blir lite komplicerat. Och sen så, eftersom vi har ju många olika variationer på våra produkter, så blir det väldigt mycket administration eftersom varje produkt är olik en annan.
TTIP, som är Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership mellan USA och Europa, det är ju ett väldigt omfattande och ambitiöst program. Det här går ju utom det som man kallar ett traditionellt frihandelsavtal. Och anledningen till det är att i ett traditionellt frihandelsavtal så pratar man ofta om tullar och tariffer. Här så pratar vi om också en regelharmonisering över tiden. Europa och USA är ganska jämstora som förhandlingspartners. Det gör att den ena kan inte sätta samma press på den andra som man kanske kan om man förhandlar med ett litet land i till exempel Sydamerika eller i Asien.
Why now? Because we've all all of us, Americans, Europeans, the world, have just experienced the most severe financial crisis in our globally interdependent economy. In fact, in the United States, this is the most severe financial crisis that we have experienced since the Great Depression of the 1930s. So a combination of a political context and the fact that this is an opportunity to pull away from the financial crisis is why we are pursuing TTIP so proactively now. It's an opportunity for all of us that we shouldn't miss the chance to exploit.
Det är EU-kommissionen som förhandlar, inte medlemsstaterna. Vi har ju gett ett grundmandat för kommissionen att förhandla inom så många områden som möjligt. Men jag hoppas ju på ett så brett och djupt avtal som möjligt.
Handel har ju drivit utvecklingen framåt i världen ända sedan de som gav sig iväg, vikingarna, ska jag väl säga då.
Det spelar ingen roll om man bor i San Francisco eller Stockholm eller New York. Det är inte där gränserna går idag. Bland människor finns det inga begränsningar, utan det är snarare gamla regler och gamla lagar som förhindrar fri rörelse av varor.
I juli 2013 påbörjades förhandlingarna och fortsätter under hela 2014. Sedan ska allt som förhandlas granskas och förhoppningen är att avtalet signeras i slutet av 2015 för att därefter ratificeras i respektive regioner.
Det är ju ett ganska tätt schema som är satt just därför att båda parter verkligen vill att det här ska kunna avslutas så snart som möjligt.
Between the EU and the US, there are a context of shared values, shared history, and a great interest in what is and can be our future agendas. We want to promote Atlantic unity. There's an enormous opportunity and we want to seize it.
Det är alltså två jättestora handelspartner som har handelshinder sig emellan som säger vi ska ta bort så mycket vi kan av det också. Det är just uppenbart vilken potential det är.
That's good, I think. Great. That's the first video. And our next speaker, I would like to introduce the Swedish Minister for Trade, Eva Bjurling.
Good morning, all of you, and what could be better than to start discussing TTIP in the morning? At least I felt very happy this morning when I woke up and knew that I was going to be here and talk to you about my favorite subject, I should say. Since in my daily work I rather often discuss free trade agreements and the importance of free trade. As you know, we are also in negotiations with some other countries and regions, but this is number one, of course. And it's also something that I've been working with since I started at this position in 2007. At that time, a bit naive, maybe, a bit premature. At least other EU ministers told me so when I tried to say that why don't we start the discussion about EU and US together in a free trade agreement. But then we had a financial crisis and we still have a lot of struggle with the global economy, and both of us have high unemployment and therefore spooky. And therefore, we know that both of us need to take action. So I'm very happy that we now have started to negotiate, and I think that, as already has been mentioned, that this really will be an agreement for the future. Not just about trade, it's a partnership in many, many areas. And this will, of course, strengthen our commercial ties across the Atlantic. And I think also that it will contribute to a lot of more job opportunities and growth for both of us. We know already today that the existing transatlantic trade accounts for more than 15 million jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. And we know that it's a huge potential to create even more jobs. And therefore, I really wanted to point at something very important that also was mentioned here briefly, and that it is it's so much more than just lowering tariffs. It's also about mutual recognition, to recognize each other's standards. And I think just if we take a look to begin with at the tariffs, we know that the cars are up to 10% more expensive. I would say in US cars, when they come to Europe, they will become more than 10% more expensive. For bicycles, it's 15%, clothes 12%, and shoes, as we can see here, 17%. But that's just one part. Then if we think about some specific sectors, I just give some examples. One of them is the pharmaceutical industry, and another one is the automobile industry. We know that there are very different rules and regulations when you would like to produce medicine in US compared to Europe. We know that we have all different clinical tests with different phases, and that could facilitate a lot, of course, if we can just recognize each other's systems or harmonize them. That's up to the negotiators. The same thing goes with cars, of course, and the security in the cars. We know that there are different systems for them too today. And that could facilitate a lot. We know also that if we will have a deep and comprehensive agreement, we can increase trade by up to 20% in both directions. And that all Swedes could have 1,700 Swedish krona more each year, according to the Swedish National Board of Trade. There are some other figures out in the European Union also, but I prefer to look at our Swedish examples, because that's important here in Sweden for everyone, all of you, I would say. And in total, this is exactly what the world economy needs right now.
Mm-hmm.
To have the two biggest economies together, to become a single market together, where we can create a lot of job opportunities. Some people claim to say then that there are many problems. We have some details. We can just say hormone beef, popular word in Sweden to say no to. We can discuss other details, but I'm rather sure that we will find a very good agreement, and we have given a mandate for the European Commission to negotiate this, because it's not for the single member states. And we are convinced about that it will be a very good agreement where we respect our own rules, and at the same time we will also recognize US rules, and in the long run facilitate a lot. I've also got a question rather often that well, when do you think that this will be in reality then? When can we have this everything in place? Well, in the beginning it was said from the European Commission that they would like to finalize this during their mandate period, which ends this year, something September or so. And then it was said during Obama's mandate period. And I think that this schedule that was shown here that one is rather realistic, during 2015, late 2015. And finally, I would say that I'm also very happy to notice when I'm traveling throughout Sweden, meeting Swedish companies, rather many of them put that question: how is it going with the free trade agreement, as they call it, between EU and US? Many of them, they have heard about this, and they are really longing for it, and they look forward to facilitated trade between us and US. So I know that they are also very eager. Something that you also can see when you discuss with the other parts in this, I would say both the labor union and also the business community. So I'm very happy for that whole Sweden stands strong behind this, and so does Europe. And I can promise you that our government will continue to work very hard to make TTIP, as we say in Swenglish, instead of TTIP, very much a reality as soon as possible. Thank you.
The videos that the second one will roll here in a second, they're being posted on a YouTube channel, TTIP Removing Barriers. So there will be other videos coming out in the next few weeks. Look for those. And the second video is entitled Who Wins? A very important question.
So this is from CISA.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Det är alltså två jättestora handelspartner som har handelshinder sig emellan som säger vi ska ta bort så mycket vi kan av det också. Det är just uppenbart vilken potential det är.
Ja, vem vinner egentligen på TTIP? Enligt oberoende undersökningar så skulle EUs ekonomi öka med 120 miljarder euro och USAs med 90 miljarder euro.
Den merkantilistiska synen att det är ett nollsummespel, att det finns en vinnare och en förlorare. Så är det inte här, utan det här gynnar både Europa och USA. Och när sånt här sker, det har vi sett i världshistorien med när frihandeln har blomstrat, då har också samhällena blomstrat.
Men det är inte bara Europa och USA som skulle få en förbättrad ekonomi. Även resten av världen skulle öka med cirka 100 miljarder.
Alltså det är viktigt att tänka på när det här avtalet eller partnerskapet som vi nu pratar om, att det är mellan världens två största och mest avancerade ekonomier. Det är alltså en otrolig potential i ett avtal att två så stora ekonomier tänker komma överens om att det ska bli lättare att handla mellan oss. Det ska bli lättare att investera över Atlanten. Och det är ju ett utgångsläge där handeln mellan de här ekonomierna redan är en tredjedel av världshandeln. Det finns olika beräkningar hur mycket handel skulle öka och våra egna ligger på att i storleksordningen plus 20% av handeln. Men det är ganska försiktiga bedömningar ska sägas.
We know that passage of TTIP would benefit manufacturing and services industries. We also know that small and medium-sized enterprises would specifically benefit from passage of TTIP because of the removal of non-tariff barriers. Just simply making the cost of doing business less on enterprises that otherwise would be blocked from markets.
Om du tar till exempel när det gäller bilar så är det helt olika regelverk för amerikanska bilar och europeiska bilar idag. Skulle vi kunna erkänna varandras regelverk? Det är klart att det skulle underlätta väldigt mycket. Och för alla de företag som också jobbar inom den typen av industri, jag tänker alla underleverantörer, skulle ju naturligtvis också då kunna ta sig in på den amerikanska marknaden samtidigt som amerikanska företag kan komma hit. Ett annat område som är viktigt är ju inte minst inom life science-industrin och alla läkemedel. Fina, avancerade nya läkemedel som idag inte godkänns på amerikansk sida eller på europeisk sida på grund av hårda, tuffa regleringar som vi vill behålla och ska ha. Men vi borde ändå ömsesidigt kunna erkänna att amerikansk medicin fungerar i Europa och tvärtom. Så att det finns stora vinster att göra och inte minst när vi tänker på alla krångliga tullprocedurer som vi har idag.
Problemområden som finns, de är nog ganska uppenbara. Det är ju genmodifierade grödor och det är hormonbehandlad biff. Men det är även en del kring ursprungsbeteckningar. Det är mest kulturella frågor. Och jag tror inte vi ska ha förhoppningen att man når fram på alla områden. Men jag tror man kommer att nå väldigt långt. De som är oroliga för att det här kommer att innebära en fullständig avreglering eller delvis avreglering mellan USA och Europa, de behöver inte vara oroliga. Vi ska inte sänka standarden. Men mycket av det här som är handelshinder idag är inte kulturella, är inte reella. Låt oss ta bort dem.
Hur stort är TTIP? Och det vi har sagt, då är det lågt räknat att för varje svensk så skulle han eller hon kunna tjäna 1700 kronor per år. Och det vet jag att i internationella beräkningar så är det relativt konservativ beräkning. Det finns de som talar om betydligt större summor. Men allt beror helt på hur många områden är det vi får med och hur många tekniska handelshinder är det som vi kan ta bort. Men om man tittar på hur viktig USA är redan idag som handelspartner så förstår alla att bara en liten sänkning av regelkrångel, bara en liten sänkning av tullar blir enorma summor som kommer då alla till del och dessutom skapas en positiv spiral med fler jobbmöjligheter.
This time I'd like to introduce our third speaker this morning, former CEO of Electrolux and Europe co-chair for the Transatlantic Business Dialogue, Hans Strawberry.
Well, thank you, and you've already heard my speech here, but let me elaborate a bit on that. I think a successful outcome of the ongoing negotiations on TTIP it's very important to the European prospects of creating jobs and growth. This is, I would say, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to strengthen the economic ties between the European and community and the US, and it would highly benefit both economies. GDP on both sides of the Atlantic would increase significantly. The dynamic effects would be even greater. And consumers will feel the effects that are very positive in lower consumer prices and more money left in their wallets at the end of the month. But TTIP is not just important in economic terms, but also to set standards in a number of areas with the aim of safeguarding high standards, high levels of environmental protection and the health and the safety of our citizens. Many small and medium-sized enterprises will particularly gain from TTIP in their capacity as suppliers to larger companies or in their capacity or in their own right exporting both goods and I would underline services. Mm-hmm. The Swedish business community and individual companies have long argued for freeing up trade and investment between the two continents. And I'm extremely pleased as the co-chair for the European TABD organization to see how these negotiations now progress in a very positive spirit. When I met with the USTR Mike Froman and the European Trade Commissioner Karel de Gucht last week in Davos, I met them at the TABD event together with a number of transatlantic business leaders. They reiterated that 3 successful rounds of negotiations have been held during this year, and there are another 5 to come that are scheduled for 2014 with an end date in sight, and I leave that open. But I think during 2015 is a good guess. And already during the upcoming 4th round in March, negotiators will look at customs duties and how they can be eliminated or drastically reduced. And this will again gain and benefit for the consumers with lower prices and I would also say a greater variety of choice in the store. Many hurdles, of course, are there in the negotiations. They will pop up over time. My wish is that, and what I'm striving for in my TABD role, where we organize some 80 or more transatlantic businesses, when reaching out to other parts of the civil society, including trade unions, including consumer groups, is that we should try to put differences aside we should try to put vested interests aside and go for the big picture. If too many unnecessary non-trade concerns are introduced, the final package risks being watered down, and there will be little or no substance to companies. And this will be extremely harmful to our prospects of getting our economic houses in order. Therefore, I urge everyone to, with stakes in these negotiations, to show understanding, flexibility, and willingness to compromise. What is then business expecting from the expecting from these negotiations? Well, we want an ambitious and comprehensive deal, but hope that it will not drag on forever. That customs duties on industrial as well as agricultural products should be eliminated or drastically reduced with some possible transition periods for sensitive products. We want that we can solve the behind-the-border barriers of more technical character that are both costly for companies and ultimately will be costly for consumers. We want to aim for an agreement on a mutual understanding of standards, and at the later stage go for a convergence of these standards and harmonization. That negotiators will not allow sensitive issues and areas to take others hostage and thus risk delaying or even upholding a final agreement. That the final agreement contains a dispute settlement mechanism, especially for investor state, the so-called ISDS, and to make a deal that proves beneficial for small and medium enterprises in their capacities as suppliers and exporters, because here we have the true winners, I believe, in these negotiations. And finally, that TTIP will not lead to deregulation, but smarter regulation without double standards that still safeguards and strengthens people's health, security, and the environment. Thank you.
We're just going to take a few seconds here to raise the screen and ask our speakers to come back up to the front here, where we'll have questions available. I'm sure there's a lot of questions about this as TTIP is ongoing. Some of the areas they've talked about now are non-tariff and what that means, and I think there's quite a bit of discussion to be had there regarding the pharmaceutical industry, for example, and some of the other things. Torbjörn Sundvall shared one of his daily email strings with me the day before yesterday on what it's like for a business person on either side of the Atlantic to go through some of the regulations and how much time and energy and administration time and costs it takes to do business. And so with that, I'd like to invite our three speakers here again, and I'll pass around a microphone if people have questions for any of them. We can get underway here in just a second.
Perhaps Minister, do you want to be in the center?
In the middle?
Yeah,
Okay.
why not? Yeah.
Någon ordning.
Ja, någon ordning får det vara på torpet. Hur?
Okay. And Stephanie will have the microphone here if anyone has questions from the audience.
Any question here? No?
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Marcus Oskarsson, TV4. Thank you for a very nice event and a very interesting subject. I would like to ask Eva and Mr. Ambassador about if there's any differences between the Democrats and the Republicans in the US regarding their position on this issue, and whether that the discussions in Washington internally in the US, whether that is impacting the pace on this process. Thanks.
Eva, why don't you take that question?
should I answer? You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. Actually, what we are seeing are indications of strong bipartisan support for this trade deal because it's in everyone's self-interest. And I think most importantly, the president is really driving this forward and making this a top priority in his second term. But it's also important to remember that the legislation for this deal originated in Congress with Democratic and Republican co-sponsors reflecting that bipartisan support. And in the end, I think that there's great recognition that we live in a globally interdependent economy, and that if we can harmonize regulatory regimes, technologies, and from that emanates values, we all gain and we all progress. So I am very comfortable in my hope that TTIP gets consummated regarding where we are politically in the United States.
Should I continue?
Please, if you
okay.
can, yes.
Well, I start with that Democrats and Republicans then, and then maybe I should also translate it to Swedish politics. But we did, some Europeans and some Americans, a report in 2011. It was a transatlantic task force on trade and investment, where we brought up certain issues that we thought were the most important ones to facilitate trade and investment. And this was done, from the American side, the leading guy was a Republican, Jim Colby, and on the European side it was me. And we presented this report both in US and Europe, and I think that it was very positive thoughts after this, and it was also a kind of injection for the Commission, and I would say also for the USTR. And then we have Democrats. We have Democrats as USTRs, because I've survived some of them now. and they are also very positive. So we say from the American side, it's both between Republicans and Democrats. And those that are against TTIP in US, certain persons, they come from both of the parties too. So you cannot say that one or another is against. And I think that's also why it can be such a strong signal from US. When Obama gave this green signal, for me, I must admit that I was a bit surprised that it was such an open mandate. Because if you think a little bit more about the background, how US has behaved in WTO when it comes to agriculture, for example, it has always been something very, very sensitive. And this time, with European Union, they gave an open mandate also for that. So I was positively surprised. And then if we think about Europe, we have also given a very open mandate for the Commission to negotiate, and also those countries that traditionally and fight very much for protecting their agriculture, read South countries in the South. So, without mentioning any names. Within Sweden, we can also see strong support from our parliament. We can see some doubts from our left party and from the Green Party. But the biggest party in the opposition, the Social Democrats, are together with us. And therefore, we can also give a strong support when we are at the council in Brussels. And I think that's necessary if you want to have a broad and comprehensive agreement. You need to have this strong support from a huge majority of respective parliament.
If I may also comment on that, We have the TPA that is extremely important on the US side and the fast track through Congress. But I like to, from the business side, to point to, we also in Europe have a parliament that is going to be elected. And we have a situation where, well, Europe was built on the free movement of goods, services, etc. And if with this low voting turnout that we have in Europe, we may run the risk to have a parliament that is not for what we initially built the European Union for. So therefore, from business, I would like to encourage everyone to vote in these parliamentary elections, not what to vote on, but to vote, because this is important for your job, your own job, because free trade, open borders are very important for the prosperity of. There is a direct correlation between that and jobs and growth.
Thank you very much, Maria Ludvigsson, Svenska Dagbladet. Thank you so much for this breakfast seminar and for the breakfast, of course. This sounds very nice. It's if you're very much consensus, there's no problem and no differences between Republicans and Democrats. I'm not convinced. But so let's go on and pose the question in another way. Are there similar areas where you won't be this consensus? For example, I can imagine what Sweden will focus on as a big problem. Do we have to take in all these
hormone beefs?
Sorry?
Hormone beefs.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And other things we know that's very, very dangerous from the US. That's what we will focus on. But in the US, what's the problem? What is it that you're not this positive about? Where are the discussions not so easily done?
Thank you for that question. If I may go first. No, I want to be clear. I wasn't suggesting that there was consensus, but I think it's important to recognize that that's not our system. Our democracies are very different. Sweden, of course, is a democracy that's thousands of years old, with long-term roots from which a process of consensus has emerged. America is a system, is a democracy in which we debate. We argue, sometimes loudly. That's how we make decisions. So no, I'm not saying consensus. What I'm saying is that there's a collective recognition that there's a self-interest in making doing business easier, and that's what this trade agreement is about. So that's an important distinction, and I thank you for that question on that. And I think that we will see differences of opinion emerge as the executive branch transfers action to the legislative branch over time. But it is important to recognize that within the executive branch, the most important policymaker, the president, is absolutely personally convicted about this, about getting this done. And that's where a lot of energy will go. And that's important because we don't want the deal with, we want a clean, straightforward deal to send up to the Hill. And we want that because we have learned the benefits of what trade agreements can do, both in terms of trade and in terms of our partnerships and alliances around the world. Take a look at NAFTA. We're celebrating the 20 years anniversary of NAFTA this year. Nothing, in my opinion, has brought America and Mexico closer and meshed us more closer and and created greater synchronicity in terms of trade than NAFTA. And that's the opportunity of the transatlantic relationship here with TTIP. It really is it really is strategically the best is yet to come if we can get this done.
And if I may add,
Please,
in
yeah.
that aspect, Mexico is one of the fastest growing countries right now, very much
It's true.
thanks to that.
Yeah.
Differences and problems, of course, we will see problems too. But I think still that you need to focus on what is going to happen in the long run. It's a win-win situation for both parts. And especially, as Hans said, for small and medium-sized companies. But of course, it has already started this debate in Sweden about GMOs, about hormone beef. And we are very clear, and the Commission is very clear that this should not be brought into the negotiations. we will continue without our hormone beef. On the other hand, I must admit that it's rather interesting sometimes when we discuss that, because it's totally okay for us to go to US and eat the good meat there, but it's not okay to have the same meat here, right? But we are not going to bring in hormone beefs, and that is a clear no on that one. Then we have another one. It's this service audiovisuel. Mm-hmm. It's the French audiovisual services that they were deadly against to bring into the mandate, and that was actually the most difficult question when we had the discussions within the European Union and when we were going to give the mandate to start the negotiations. That's I mean, for us, for Sweden, it's rather difficult to understand, I think. Why couldn't we bring in that? I mean, why not audiovisual services? You still have to make your own choice. And we also thought that the compromise that the Commission at that time gave in the beginning was that each country should have their own decision if they would like to have audiovisual services or not. But France couldn't accept that either. So they decided that we, in Sweden, our children, grandchildren, should not be allowed to have the clearance, free clearance for American movies, for example. Which just is an example of that some countries within the European Union are a bit more protectionistic than others. But still, I mean, that was a detail that we discussed for hours, instead of discussing how much we can win on this. As I mentioned, 1,700 Swedish crowns for each person in Sweden. And you can think about how much easier it will be for small and medium-sized companies, and especially with those industries that were already mentioned, the life science, pharmaceutical industry, the automotive industry, and a lot of others. But I'm sure that we will have some stumble blocks on our way, but let's focus on the positive effects. And I'm sure that we will have a fantastic agreement in the end.
We have time for one more question here. The Trade Minister has a busy schedule today. So.
Hi, Tom Sullivan, AFP Newswire. I have a question for the Trade Minister regarding another controversial area, the ISDS, the dispute settlement system. Many critics say that this could open up public authorities in Sweden and throughout Europe to being sued by American companies who want to force their way into the market. What is the Swedish government's position on the dispute settlement mechanism?
Well, we have a lot of agreements with other countries when it comes to this area. We also have the discussions within the European Union. We can have a common dispute settlement agreement with other countries. Some of the European member states have very strong agreements, and other ones have a little bit more liberal ones. I think that we will agree upon that in European Union, and I think that we can come to a good agreement also with US, because this is important for the companies, because it will protect their investments on foreign markets. And I should also mention that I don't think that we should be so worried, because if we look at the figures from UN from not last year, because it's 2012, it's said that of those cases that were finalized, we can see that the state won 42%, the investor won 31%, and 27% was done by negotiations. So that means that it's rather equal. And I don't think that we should worry about that. I think we need to have these agreements. We need to have another area in combination with this, very strong IPR, intellectual property agreements. And I think it's important for both of our economies, since we have a lot of small and medium-sized companies, a lot of them with innovations. They need to have a strong patent system, as we are going to have now, a common European patent. And also for US have a strong patent system. And we need to protect this, because it is within these areas that we can show competitiveness against the rest of the world. It's not when it comes to cheap goods any longer. It's more high qualitative products together with services, selling systems, and within this a lot of innovations that require protection. So we need, I would say, we will need both strong regulations in certain areas, and we can liberalize in other areas.
All right. In order to maintain everyone's schedule today, if you have follow-up questions, please contact me right after this. I can put you in touch with the people that you need to speak with for the trade minister or for Hans or for the ambassador. And I would once again like to thank all of you for your participation in this. TTIP, Removing Barriers, is the YouTube channel. Also like to thank Dig-In again, and also our hosts here today at Prime PR. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.